Okay, so let's jump right in with a huge question, maybe one of the biggest we've ever asked. How do you build a society that actually lasts? I'm not just talking about one that's powerful or wealthy, but one that's just, stable, and can truly stand the test of time. Well, it turns out there are blueprints for this stuff that go back thousands of years.
And today, we're going to look at one of those blueprints. It comes from Parshat Shoftim, which is a section of Deuteronomy, the fifth book of the ancient Hebrew texts. Now, whether you look at it as a religious text or a historical document, it lays out this absolutely fascinating framework for a functional society. And it's all built on three foundational pillars.
And it all boils down to these three things: integrity, not just keeping your promises, but baking it right into the justice system itself; courage, not just as a personal virtue, but as a national strategy; and discipline, especially for the people at the very, very top. And these aren't just, fuzzy, abstract ideas. The text gives really concrete instructions on how to weave them into the fabric of a nation.
And as this framework shows, it really all starts with justice. This isn't just about some abstract divine will. It's about creating practical, human-led institutions that are designed to make sure things are fair and orderly, starting with the judges themselves. So let's start with that first pillar, integrity. The title of this whole section, Shoftim, usually gets translated as judges. But, that simple translation, it kind of misses a really crucial detail about how this society was supposed to work.
See, the original Hebrew word is shofet. And a shofet wasn't just a judge sitting on a bench. They were more like a tribal chieftain. And that's not just a word choice thing. It completely changes their role and how they relate to the people they serve. Just think about the contrast here for a second. A modern judge often makes their rulings from this position of separation, kind of removed from the community. But a shofet? They were deeply integrated. They had to walk the same streets, break bread with the very same people they were making rulings about. This creates a really powerful built-in reason not to be corrupt or unfair, because they would have to face the real-world consequences of their decisions every single day.
But look, a judge, or a chieftain for that matter, is only as good as the information they get, and the system knew that the biggest threat to justice wasn't always a corrupt judge, but a lying witness.
And this is a very real problem, right? Think about it. One person with a grudge could potentially get an innocent person condemned. So the system needed a super robust, almost foolproof way to filter out false testimony. So how'd they do it?
They built this incredible, multi-layered process to get to the truth. First, you needed at least 2 witnesses. No one could be convicted just on one person's say-so. Next, you interrogate those witnesses separately to see if their stories have any holes. Then you bring them together. But here's where it gets really genius, these last 2 deterrents. The fourth step, a mirror penalty. If you were caught lying, you got the exact same punishment you were trying to bring down on someone else. And finally, the 5th step, the big one, the first-hand rule. The witnesses themselves had to be the first to carry out the sentence. That is ultimate accountability. It's one thing to say someone deserves a punishment. It's a whole other thing to have to be the one to do it.
Now, this idea of accountability didn't just stop in the courtroom. It went all the way up to the palace. The second pillar of this society was discipline, and it applied most forcefully to the nation's top leader, the king. The rules for the king were pretty much designed as an anti-tyranny protocol. He had to be one of the people, not a foreigner, to make sure his interests were aligned with the nation's. But the most radical idea here is that last one. The king had to personally write out his own copy of the law, not just read it. And this wasn't just symbolic. It was a constant, physical reminder that the leader was not above the law, but was actually its chief servant.
Okay, so we've got integrity in the courts and discipline in leadership. The final pillar is courage, specifically when it comes to national defense. This blueprint understood that winning a battle wasn't just about swords and shields. It was about morale.
Before a battle, it wasn't a general who gave the big pre-battle speech. It was a priest, a Kohen. And this powerful address was meant to totally reframe the conflict, reminding the soldiers that they weren't fighting alone. It was, in a way, psychological warfare, designed to build courage by connecting their fight to a higher purpose.
And this practice is just so significant. This is widely considered the very first example of military chaplaincy in history. The whole idea that a spiritual advisor has a formal role in an army, providing moral and spiritual support to soldiers, it starts right here. It's a tradition that you still see in militaries all over the world today.
So you can really start to see how this wasn't just a random collection of rules, but a single cohesive system. The integrity of the witness protects the judge. The discipline of the king upholds the law for everyone.
and the courage inspired by the chaplain protects the entire nation. Each part reinforces all the others.
So, we started by asking how to build a society that lasts. This ancient blueprint suggests the answer isn't about grand monuments or huge armies. It's about a system of profound checks and balances, where every single person has a deep responsibility to the whole. And it leaves us with a pretty powerful question for today. In our own complex modern world, which of these ancient principles, accountability and justice, service and leadership, and purpose-driven courage, do we need to remember the most?